A waterplane can land in an untouched area and take off again without leaving a trace, offering unparalleled freedom. Before the war, water flying seemed to hold the future of international passenger transport, but time and technology caught up, and flying off water has now become the exception. Alaska is dotted with lakes and rivers. During the summer months, floats are the only way to fly. There are few roads, so most transport to communities in the bush must be done by floatplane. Water here provides thousands of runways for free. But water flying is not only business, it's also a recreation, combining the beauties of flight and boating in the one machine. Lake Hood in Anchorage is one of the largest floatplane centers in the world. No boats are allowed here. These two interconnected lakes are the exclusive reserve of waterplanes. Here, hundreds of aircraft find a mooring. There's nothing unusual about being a pilot and owning a plane in Alaska. Here, the floatplane is the pickup truck, sedan, and taxi in a land without roads. The de Havilland Canada Beaver is the mainstay of commercial operations here. Many companies and private owners fly this venerable 1940s design. It's versatile, strong, and a joy to fly. The roar of the 450 horsepower radial engine harks back to a distant time when flying was pure romance. Tourism in Alaska's wilderness regions is totally dependent on flying. During the summer months, anglers come from all over the world to fish for salmon. Aircraft then transport the fish out to factories where it's either canned or frozen and picked up later by the proud fishermen. In Alaska, just about every aircraft that can fly with floats has a pair. Larger operators fly the 8-seat Beaver or the 17-seat Otter. To extend their life and make flights faster and cheaper, some Otters have been given a turboprop. But since most operations are only marginally profitable, this engine upgrade is more the exception than the rule. The combination of flying and boating makes the waterplane the ultimate freedom machine. Until the Second World War, intercontinental flights were the exclusive domain of flying boats. The Dinakey Marina in Miami was one of the main ports for flights between Europe and South America. These planes could not put down on land and were only taken out of the water for major maintenance. Great companies like Boeing, Sikorsky, Dornier, and Shorts built large flying boats. This Short Sunderland is the last remaining flying example of the breed. Built in 1944 for the military, it was converted to passenger use in 1963. Acquired as a corroding wreck in the Caribbean, it took the current owner, Edward Hulton, 2 years to restore the boat to flying condition. Determined to keep it out of a museum, the crew face a continual struggle to protect the hull and airframe from corrosion as it operates in salt water. Ken Emmett, the pilot, flew flying boats for BOAC in the late 40s from this very same stretch of water, just off Southampton in the south of England. A recently retired 747 captain, he relishes the opportunity to get back to some real flying. While on the water, the aircraft is considered a boat and must comply with all relevant harbour regulations. But once the patrol launch signals that the runway is clear of weekend sailors, the aircraft begins its 3/4 of a mile, 1 minute long takeoff run. If this was 1946, she could be beginning a long-haul flight to Cairo, Singapore, or Sydney. The aircraft carries 30 passengers in 3 cabins. On the upper deck, a sumptuously furnished lounge bar recalls the glamour and elegance of those pioneering days when intercontinental travel was accomplished in style. Although less than 100 flying boats of all types were ever built, these giants captured the imagination and fancy of the public like nothing else before or since. But those days were short-lived. Thanks to World War II, hundreds of airports were built and a whole infrastructure for land planes developed. The cruiser-like comfort of intercontinental travel is a dream forever gone. But for some waterplanes, a job remained. In 1933, Consolidated designed this amphibian for the US Navy, who surprisingly saw no use for it. The British Navy then snapped it up and christened it the Catalina. Coastal Command put it into service, and the aircraft soon proved itself highly effective protecting convoys, spotting and destroying U-boats, and picking up ditched sailors. The Catalina was instrumental in sinking the German battleship Bismarck. Only then did the US Navy see its virtues. It was used in all war theaters, dropping mines, bombs, torpedoes, flying missions that lasted more than 12 hours, and bringing its crew safely home even when badly damaged by enemy fire. When production ended in early 1945, more than 3,000 had been built. Although hundreds had been lost in action, many more were simply scrapped. Some Catalinas managed to survive the post-war scrapping frenzy and serve today as supply planes and fire bombers. Others lie in museum backyards awaiting restoration. The huge parasol wing, the big blister observation windows, and the wonderful feeling of flying this plane on and off water makes the Catalina popular for restoration and sale. But it holds a great danger. You could fall in love with it. That's what happened to James Boyd, an aircraft dealer from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. This was the 4th Catalina he restored. Having had no trouble selling the others, he decided to excel himself with this one. This PBY-6 was one of the last to be built and never saw action. It had spent the best part of its life as a water bomber in Canada. The restoration turned out to be a great success. This is arguably the most beautiful and authentic cat around. But sales of large water birds are more difficult nowadays, and while the plane hung around James Boyd's ramp too long, she stole his heart. Putting an amphibian down on water is not complex, but you need to remember a strange checklist item. Gear up, floats down. Forget about the floats, and you may be in deep trouble. Water at these speeds is tougher than concrete.
That was pretty macho, huh? I reckon they all went down. I've done that before. What the hell were the folks doing up? Did you put them up? I didn't put them up. We didn't. They were down. Up the whole of it. All right, let's go. All right.
James Boyd was a man with the energy of three. His drive and enthusiasm were contagious. He loved flying, especially in old 9791 Yankee. But tragically, his incredible energy ran out just before Christmas 1991. He died of a heart attack while working out on a home trainer. The Cat is up for sale, just like it's always been. It may join the air show circuit or go back to work as a water bomber in Canada, South America or Spain. The consolidated Catalina, with its Pratt & Whitney twin Wasp engines, is a proud and beautiful relic of heroic days. Water flying holds a few special techniques. As you fly along over land, the features will give you an idea of how high you are. Trees, buildings, mountains, all give the pilot a reasonable reference. But look down at a lake, especially in a no-wind situation, and there are no clues. A glassy lake might look inviting, but it can be a dangerous landing place to negotiate. You have to let the plane down very slowly, feeling your way to the water. Remembering always that however soft and friendly it may look, water at speed is extremely effective at destroying light aluminium structures like aircraft. Flying a floatplane will bring you to spots never visited before, so don't expect jetties and signs giving water depth. A good pair of boots and a lot of rope are essential when ground handling it. The plane, once on the water, behaves like a boat. It tends to turn weathercock into the wind, and a boat has got no brakes. The use of the throttle and good timing when cutting off the engine are essential. A floatplane needs much more space to take off than a wheel plane. Choppy conditions push the plane out of the water, but glassy surfaces glue the floats onto the surface. As soon as it's on the step, as pilots put it, it can accelerate to flying speed. In Alaska and Canada, floatplanes are indispensable. One pilot said that he'd even used them to land on fresh snow. How he took off again, though, was anyone's guess. In winter, the planes are pulled onto land and the floats changed to skis. 75-year-old Harry Guerin hates flying, but every year takes a beaver to his favorite fishing spot at Highline Lake. The beaver for him is the ultimate freedom machine. The normality of floatplane operations in Alaska and Canada is sharply contrasted by rarity of them in one of the wateriest countries in the world, Holland. This nation, having grown to riches by exploiting the sea, has only one floatplane. Just before the war, water flying was as normal here as anywhere in the world. The Fokker aircraft factory built floatplanes and Dornier seaplanes, which were employed by the Air Force. But the reclamation of land, the dense population and intense interest in water sports has made water flying impossible. Wings over Holland, based in Lelystad, a new town on reclaimed land, expressed an interest in acquiring a floatplane. People love it. Authorities hate it. A floatplane like the Cessna 185 is inherently noisy. Its prop, driven by a 300 horsepower engine, claws loudly away at the air. So, Wings over Holland now only makes tours with the Cessna, having to virtually beg for landing permission from local authorities. Bert Heisinger loves flying the Cessna 185, but with all the difficulties in operating it, he may soon not be able to afford it. Holland is too small for the ultimate freedom machine. The Cessna 185 is one of the workhorses of the sky. All around the world, this sturdily built machine is used on wheels, floats and skis. But new planes of this type are no longer being built. There are two large amphibians in production today. The Canadair CL-215 is a purpose-built water bomber. The Russian Beriev company have been building seaplanes since the 1930s. This is the prototype of their latest design, the Beriev 40. A jet-propelled aircraft in various configurations, it's designed to haul 54 passengers, destroy submarines, and do environmental work. Adjusting to the new economic realities they face, Beriev are now aggressively seeking foreign orders for their plane. But size is not everything. This flying bathtub, the Buccaneer, is an ultralight with boating ambitions. It can handle 2 passengers and land anywhere. This little amphibian is part of a new generation of craft that could reawaken interest in water flying. Normal light planes are now far too expensive or out of production. It costs at least $50,000 to add a set of floats to the average light plane. But this little plane will get you anywhere without corrosion problems for $30,000. The whole machine. Standing 44 feet high with a wingspan greater than that of a Boeing 747, it weighs in at 165,000 pounds and is built like a bridge. It cruises at 153 miles an hour for 20 hours, carrying up to 132 people. 4 Wright R3350 duplex cyclone engines together produce almost 9,000 horsepower. It lives in one of the beautiful lakes of Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada. It's well cared for and flies every week, just to keep fit. It started life as a patrol bomber for the US Navy.
On and power's coming.
But strategic materials were withheld from flying boat production, so it could not be pressurized and fly at altitude clear of bad weather. Its primary task as patrol bomber ended with the war before it came into full production. It was reassigned to the US Naval Air Transport Service in 1947. Only 6 were ever completed, of which there are now only 2 left. They're the biggest flying boats ever to be operational, and the last to continue working. These are the Martin 170, the mighty Mars, proudly owned and operated by Forest Industries Flying Tankers, flying in formation for the first time in more than 30 years. Apart from its contributions to the development of passenger services, the short Sunderland was a Navy patrol boat, serving heroically in the Second World War. The Germans called the Sunderland the Flying Porcupine because it was so heavily armed. It had a crew of 11 and a very well-appointed galley with China to brighten up the patrol flights that could last for 20 hours. This was a slow boat to anywhere. Cruising at 140 knots, pilots said it had built-in headwinds. It was the last flying boat ever to serve the Royal Air Force. Whether Hulton can keep the Sunderland flying or not remains to be seen. After dedicating 12 years of his life to this aircraft, he's now looking to sell, because of both the financial and emotional demands it makes on him. Operating costs run as high as $4,000 an hour, and the maintenance requirements imposed by the Civil Aviation Authority are crippling. But it would be a great shame if the last of the Sunderlands had to end up in a museum. The sight of this wonderful transport ploughing the waves should be maintained forever. Airlines don't fly amphibians, except one. Claiming to be the oldest airline in the world, these Grumman Turbo Goose aircraft work out of Miami. Services are operated to the Bahamas, beaching between the palms, and in every respect, fulfilling the romantic dreams that this kind of transport induces. The turbo geese mingle with the cruise ships, but the big airlines operating to the big airports have taken away a lot of the business for this small company. It started as a bomber and ends its life as a fire extinguisher. Since 1959, Forest Industries flying tankers have employed the Martin Mars to protect its forests from fire. As far as FIFT is concerned, the Mars will fly on well into the next century. Only a small percentage of the fires are extinguished by the Mars. With an operating cost of more than $3,000 per hour, small fires get small planes. If the lakes are glassy, the Mars can take up to 10 miles at a speed of 100 miles an hour to take in 7,200 gallons of water through a filling tube in the hull. The Mars is a big, slow plane. Water bombing requires precise timing, so flying this big, lumbering machine is an exacting business. The planes work hard on a mission, forced to do work they were never designed for. Short, agile flights, dropping water, landing to refill, taking off, dropping, and then throttling down again for the pickup. The turnaround between drops must be as short as possible. Every burnt tree means loss of revenue. The job eats up engines. But the Wrights had their turbos taken out, and now even a Moody engine has become easy to maintain. Only on water, will the pilot operate the throttles to maneuver the plane. In the air, he simply commands the engineer, who'll give him the settings. Although technically these planes could just go on flying, economics might get in the way. Fires are getting rarer, so their huge operating costs may not be justified for much longer. As the sun sets over Sproat Lake, 2 Martin Mars bathe in its last rays. A truly unique sight.